In the spring of 1943, German prisoners of war began arriving on American soil in growing numbers. Many were veterans of the Afrika Korps, captured after the collapse of Axis forces in North Africa. They stepped off ships carrying not only their uniforms and memories of combat, but a carefully constructed worldview shaped by years of Nazi propaganda. They expected a nation on the edge of collapse. What they encountered instead would quietly dismantle everything they believed. For over a decade, Nazi ideology had portrayed the United States as decadent, racially divided, and incapable of sustained sacrifice. America, they were told, was a nation of jazz, corruption, and weak industrial discipline. According to this narrative, the United States might produce consumer goods, but it lacked the resolve for total war. The prisoners would soon learn how wrong that assessment was. Between 1943 and 1946, the United States held 371,683 German prisoners of war in more than 500 camps across 46 states. It was the largest POW operation in American history. The scale alone was staggering, but what truly shocked the prisoners was not confinement, it was abundance. As trains carried them inland, German soldiers stared in disbelief through barred windows. Cities were fully illuminated at night. There were no blackout curtains, no signs of bombing damage. Factories stretched for miles. Rail yards seemed endless. For men who had grown up under rationing and constant air raids, this was their first crack in the ideological armor. Many prisoners were housed in rural camps near farms and industrial centers. This was not accidental. The United States faced severe labor shortages, and POWs were put to work under the rules of the Geneva Convention. They harvested crops, worked in lumber yards, and assisted in factories. What they saw there defied comprehension. American farms were not small family plots, but vast operations covering thousands of acres. Tractors replaced horses. Grain silos towered over the landscape. A single American farm, some prisoners noted in diaries, appeared larger than entire districts back home. Even more astonishing were the factories. At plants like Ford's Willow Run facility, German POWs learned that the United States was producing a B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes at peak output. One aircraft per hour, day and night. Assembly lines never stopped. In Germany, producing a single bomber could take weeks. The implication was impossible to ignore. This was not just industrial capacity, it was industrial domination. The psychological effect was profound. Nazi ideology had emphasized sacrifice, discipline, and technological superiority. Yet here was a society that seemed wealthy, well-fed, and efficient without visible coercion. American workers earned wages that allowed them to buy food, clothing, and even automobiles, while German civilians endured shortages and destruction. This contradiction haunted the prisoners. Equally surprising was how they were treated. German POWs in the United States were housed according to Geneva Convention standards. They received adequate food, medical care, and shelter. Many were allowed to attend classes, play sports, and read newspapers. They were paid small wages for their labor, which they could spend at camp canteens. This was not softness, it was confidence. American authorities believed that a nation strong enough to defeat Germany militarily did not need cruelty to assert dominance. Instead, they allowed reality to speak for itself. Re-education programs were introduced gradually. American officials avoided overt propaganda, understanding that forced indoctrination would fail. Instead, they exposed prisoners to uncensored newspapers, films, and discussions. Nazi hardliners were isolated, moderate voices were encouraged. Over time, the results became undeniable. Prisoners began questioning their own leadership. They debated openly. Diaries show growing admiration for American efficiency and skepticism toward Nazi promises. One POW wrote that the United States was not fighting like a desperate nation, but like a confident one. Perhaps the most telling statistic of all is this. Only 0.6% of German POWs in the United States attempted to escape. Not because escape was impossible, but because many no longer wanted to. As the war ended and prisoners prepared to return home, American authorities intensified educational efforts. Courses on democratic governance, civic responsibility, and post-war reconstruction were introduced. These were not lectures, but conversations, often led by fellow Germans who had rejected Nazi ideology. The transformation went unnoticed. After the war, many former POWs returned to Germany with a fundamentally altered worldview. Some became teachers, journalists, engineers, and political leaders in the new Federal Republic of Germany. One former POW, Walter Hallstein, would later become the first president of the European Commission, helping shape the democratic institutions of post-war Europe. This was not coincidence. Historians now recognize the POW experience in the United States as one of the most effective ideological countermeasures of the war. America defeated Nazism not only with tanks and bombers, but with exposure to a functioning democratic society powered by unmatched productivity. The prisoners had seen the truth for themselves. They had witnessed factories that outproduced entire nations, farms that fed continents, cities untouched by war, workers who lived better than German elites, and a society confident enough to treat its enemies with dignity. The United States was not merely an arsenal of weapons, it was an arsenal of ideas. By the time the last German POWs left American soil in 1946, the transformation was complete. The greatest victory had not been fought on beaches or in forests, but in mines. The collapse of Nazi ideology did not begin in Berlin. It began when its soldiers looked out train windows in America and realized the future had already arrived.